Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Fish Bites, the Miami Herald's Miami Marlins podcast. I'm Jordan McPherson. He's Andre Fernandez. We've been away for a couple weeks, so figure it's time for a little bit of an update. Dre, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. I've been busy putting together that Titletown show that some people that frequent the Herald website might have seen by now, the high school sports side. But yeah,
It took all of 15 seconds to start cross promoting. I am very impressed, Andre.
there you go. Absolutely. But this show, haven't been on this one for a while. Yeah, man, it was funny signing on today and thinking, wow, we haven't said much, even though there hasn't. It's the off season for them, not for the playoffs. Obviously, the playoffs have been hellacious.
It's been very fun.
From not so much fun lately for the Yankees, but they did have a good series against the Guardians. The Phillies, watching the Phillies go back and forth. It's a shame that series. I thought that series was headed for 7 when the Padres tied it up at 1. But great games, even though it was a 5-gamer, great games within that, and some big moments. It's been a fun postseason for sure. And then I know the big topic we want to talk about this week is the managerial search going on with the Marlins, and there's been some new, so not new, but some a little bit of news came out on that front, hasn't it, in the last couple of days?
Yeah, it definitely has. So the Marlins more or less are down to 4 main contenders as their final candidates. Before we get to them, just hash out on the timeline, especially since the World Series is about to start. MLB is very against teams announcing while the World Series games are on days World Series games are being played. So if an announcement's going to be made, it's going to be made during this week, heading into or before Game 1 on Friday, during one of the off days of the World Series, which are Sunday between Game 2 and 3, and next week Thursday between Games 5 and 6 if the series lasts that long, or after the World Series ends. So if you don't hear anything by Friday, anticipate being either an off day or after the World Series for an announcement to be made. That's just the protocol. That's how MLB doesn't want anything taking away from the World Series itself, which from MLB's standpoint, I guess I can understand that. But back to the candidates. 4 main guys. A few names that we reported early on after Don Mattingly announced that he wasn't coming back. Joe Espada, the bench coach for the Houston Astros, and Matt Quatraro from the Tampa Bay Rays. We reported both of them as possibilities early on. 2 other guys, the bench coach for the St. Louis Cardinals, Skip Schumaker, and Luis Rojas, one-time manager for the Mets and now third base coach for the Mets, are the 4 guys who are known to have gotten second interviews at this point. The Marlins interviewed close to 9 or 10 guys for the job. These were the 4 who made it past the first cut and have gotten to the second cut. And all 4 of them basically fit the bill that we all anticipated that the Marlins would be going for. Young guys who either have little or no big league managerial experience, going for bench coaches who have been in successful roles. I mean, you look at Espada, he's been a bench coach for the Astros since 2017. Astros have only made it to at least the ALCS 6 years in a row. You look at Quatraro, who's been with the Rays with Kevin Cash. He's been their bench coach since 2018, or since 2019. He's been with the Rays since 2019. He's been their bench coach since 2019. He's been with them since 2018. And obviously working under Kevin Cash. Prior to that, he was in Cleveland for 4 years under Terry Francona. So he's learned under 2 guys who knows what it takes to make it to the playoffs, and of course do it under salary cap constraints or payroll constraints that the Marlins, being the Marlins, are going to be doing it under. So you have and then Schumaker, first year as a bench coach with the Cardinals. You have a group of guys who are on the up and up, but don't really have that experience to say, hey, I've done this, which is what we were anticipating the Marlins targeting when they started the search.
I'm just happy that you referred to the 4 of them as younger guys, considering that they're all 47, 48, 42, 41. As a fellow about to be 43 this week, thank you for saying that. For starters, thank you for saying that. But yeah, they do all have qualities that are appealing in an ideal situation as far as who you would like to be leading this franchise going forward, for wins and losses as far as that goes. It's been very underwhelming, and we know that this was the year we wanted them to take off, and we didn't see that happen, not in earnest the way we were hoping for. So these are guys with experience kind of behind the scenes, all in successful franchises. And, Joe Espada, I know that he's one that would love to be the manager down here if if all things are equal, things work out the way the situation is right. He's got the connection obviously to the Yankees, which always is good when it comes to that organization with the Marlins. The ties that they have there. But I think his experience as a big time manager, I think, will help. I mean, we know, putting the caveat, of course, the way the managerial role has changed. And a lot of it is being run by the analytics department these days. But here's a guy with experience that's done it for a long time. He's familiar with the Marlins organization. I think he'd be great if they're able to land him. If they can't, you look at some of these other candidates. I mean, Quatraro has the experience of being with the Rays. They're the blueprint for, when it comes to all the, let's do it with a low budget. So they make all the right, it seems, if not all the right moves, a lot of good moves to get them where they are. Even this year they didn't get very far. They got beaten the wild card round, but I think if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that it was an injury ravaged season for the Rays, and they still did pretty good, all things considered, in a tough division. So he brings that experience. Rojas, you look at what happened in New York, that obviously doesn't look as good, seeing how they collapsed after he was on there. But, we'll see. He's a guy he's at least the one that has the managerial experience, and so that makes him appealing. And Skip Schumaker, I mean, the Cardinals, again, are one of those teams that consistently have done it right. I mean, they look like they're going to have to go through some changes now because a lot of their veterans are retiring. So we'll see how they can retool that team. But they're always in it. Even when they look like they're down and about to fall out of it, they find a way to retool. And, again, all these guys have absorbed being around that, learning from that, becoming better coaches as a result of that. So for the situation the Marlins in, we knew they weren't going to land a huge name that costs a lot of money. So if you're going to go this route, those are 4 strong ones to consider for sure.
Yeah, and on that big name hiring choice, it's also, you have to look at whether guys in that realm, that generation of managers would want to be in an area where it's basically the analytics are driving the decisions. I mean, we've talked Joe Madden like 5 or 6 times on this, where it's basically knowing that if he's just there to be the spokesperson, the person who does everything where the decisions are made for him, what's the point? Versus other guys who have gone through the analytics age of it and have sort of more towards that balancing the line of, okay, analytics, you're going to drive a lot of it, and I'll be able to make them some spot decisions here and there. And in that aspect of it, this group sort of fits into that. And I want to go back to one of the things you said about Quatraro with the Rays and how they went through the injury-riddled season still at success. Saw what the Marlins did, and the Marlins have claimed a lot of their faults for this year. They pointed to the injury bug. So if you have a guy who's gone through it and is able to maneuver around that, that's another plus on him. And also, just to bring up where these guys are, the Marlins aren't the only people going for these guys. Joe Espada has also been linked to the White Sox. Quatraro has been linked to the Royals. There are other openings that are out there. I believe there's 4 left, including the Marlins. Now that the Rangers signed Bocce. So there are still other teams that are going for the same guys. So it's a matter of seeing how the competition in between teams for these guys play out as well. Not just the Marlins want this guy, they're going to get this guy. They need to see, they're going to have to fend off some teams as well.
Yeah. I mean, it always is like that in the league at this time of year, not just in baseball, but in any sport. You got, once the first domino falls and somebody gets hired, the question is, do they jump and be that first domino? You know what I mean? Do they have a guy that they feel strongly about that they will present an offer to and lock them up, and then the other 3 go off to wherever? Or are they going to kind of take a little more patient approach, and then if one of them gets snatched up, then kind of narrows their choices down? I don't know. It's an interesting balance there, because if they are kind of dead set on someone, you don't want to wait too long and get them taken away from you, obviously. So we'll see how it goes.
Unless that one person is currently employed by one of the teams who's in the World Series, and you're waiting for that to determine if you're able to get him. That's where the interesting factor comes in.
Right. And that's where, reading between the lines, why I like him as personally, I like him as the best candidate. I think a lot of people do, just because of his experience. And I think the fact that, like I said before, he would love to be here again, if the circumstances are right, if the money's right, all that kind of thing. I think he'd love to be here because he was here before. He's familiar with Miami and that sort of thing, and he'd be a good fit. So if that does end up being the case, then yeah, it would be worth the wait. But obviously, you don't want to see this week, if you don't want to see like maybe in the next 3 days, 2 of them get snatched up, and then
he goes, "Hey,
says
sorry
no,
guys, yeah,"
and then you're screwed, and then you're either stuck with the one left, or who knows, maybe no one. So it's a very difficult, delicate balance always when you're trying to go through this process. So it'll be interesting to see in the next few days. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they made a move soon, maybe just to do it. But you're right. If they are dead set on a certain someone who you translate his last name literally means sword, yeah, it would be worth the wait, I think.
Yep, no doubt about it. And to transition to bigger picture of baseball, let's talk some World Series, Dre.
Yeah.
We've got, again, like we've mentioned up at the top, we have the Houston Astros, the number 1 seed in the American League, who the Miami Marlins happened to take 2 of 3 against in June in Houston without Sandy Alcantara starting any of those games, against the Philadelphia Phillies, who got into the playoffs as the number 6 seed, the last seed with the expanded playoffs, and got a lot of help from the Marlins when the Marlins took 3 of 4 against Milwaukee that final week of the season. And then just absolutely took off. I mean, with the 2 overall, you've got the Astros just steamrolling through everything, sweep the Mariners with a couple big home runs by Yordan Alvarez, and then sweeping the Yankees. I know Dre's making a face right now at that. And then the Phillies beat the Cardinals, They beat the Cardinals, they beat the Braves, and then they beat the Padres to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to be 2 division champions and to defeat another team that just was gritty and found their way up to the end. I mean, the series itself is going to be lopsided just when you look at the 2 teams, but I'm anticipating the Phillies are going to be able to steal a couple games away from Houston in this. I think they have, just with their offense, and if Zach Wheeler or Aaron Nola can get hot behind game 1 or 2, it can make the series interesting.
If this was any other year, I always love picking the team that has that quote unquote like team of destiny look. And I think I texted you the other day when they
yes, you did.
And they just do. The Phillies just do. But damn, the Astros are good. I had the unfortunate whatever you want to call it, of seeing that up close in these last few games, especially, and saw it during the season, and what an obstacle they were to the Yankees, and some of that is on the Yankees for just not having enough contact hitters that can put the ball in play. You can't be boom or bust, all or nothing home run, only home run power type, overall. And a couple of injuries contributed to that. But I'm equating that to this series because you need that. You need that mix to have a chance to beat this Houston team with the kind of pitching that they can throw at you, not just Verlander, but Christian Javier, McCullers, all those guys. To be consistent against that bullpen too, you have to put the ball in play. You have to create runs. And that's what the Phillies are doing. That's what the Phillies have done throughout this postseason and have gotten those big hits. Bryce Harper looks rejuvenated. I mean, he was a generational talent.
Bryce and Reese have been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, but I'm going mainly, but I'm saying Bryce in particular because here's a guy that was always mentioned in the same breath as Trout as being one of those generational talents. And we're seeing his moment. We're seeing the potential for this to be his run. You know what I mean? And I think that there's a huge obstacle in their way with the Astros, but it would be something if this is kind of something where he can push them. And what a way to do it too, because he's been on a lot better. Not a lot better sounds harsh, but he's been on very talented teams. He was when he was in Washington and here, and to do it with a wild card Cinderella story, just get hot and go through it. I mean, that'd be something. But I don't know. I agree with you that Philly will win some games in this series. Can they win 4 is what I still question, just because Houston is so complete of a team. So if you ask me right now, I don't know if we got into where we wanted to make our picks yet or something.
Go for it.
I just seeing the Astros, it's hard for me to pick against them. Like I'd have to stick with it's Houston's year to pull it off, but it wouldn't shock me because like I said, I think the Phillies have the formula if things continue to break their way and they continue to play the way they are. But that Astros team is just lethal right now, and they're going to have games if it does go to Game 7. it's over there. It's in Houston. So that it's hard to see them getting beat in a situation like that. So I'm going to pick the Astros.
How many games?
7. I think it goes 7. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's how I'll balance it. That's how I'll give Philly their due for the kind of run that they're on. But in a game 7, wow! If you tell me the Phillies win that game, 2-1, whatever it would be, tip of the cap at that point for by far for them. But yeah, I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. With Houston, I'm going Houston in 6. For me, it's going to come down to I need to see the first 2 games. Those first 2 games where it's going to be Verlander versus Wheeler and most likely Framber Valdez versus Nola. Philly need to at least get one of those 2 in order to have a chance. Order to have a chance for it to make it back to Houston for it to get to game 6 and 7.
Yeah.
The 3 through 5, those games that are going to be played in Philly, to me, are going to be absolute wild cards. I feel like they can go either way. Philly needs at least one of those first 2, especially since, again, Zach Wheeler's been their horse all postseason. He's been dominant every single start. If he can find a way to outduel Verlander, that will set the course for the series. And then when you look at the offenses, I mean, we talked about, like I talked about Rhys Hoskins with, I think it was 4 home runs in the NLCS. Harper with the big bombs, Schwarber showing up, JT doing what he's doing. Again, we've known how lethal their offense was, and we knew that was going to be their bread and butter. The fact that their pitching is held up enough, specifically their bullpen holding up enough, and their defense holding up enough for them to be able to squeak by and let their offense do their job. If they can do that again against a very, 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 did I say very enough good Houston Astros team.
Schwarber is harming baseballs more than he usually does these days. I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah. But, I feel like, again, if they get into Philadelphia with the series tied 1-1 or by some miracle up 2-0, then Philly's going to have, but if they're down 2-0 after the first 2 games, I find it hard to see them coming back and winning for the final 5.
This reminds me of a couple of years ago. You remember the way that series between the Dodgers and the Rays just kept going back and forth. It was like one highlight by Muncy or one of these Dodgers hitters, and then and then the next thing or Mookie, and then the next thing Arozarena comes up with the big to me now in the role of Arozarena this year, Yordan Alvarez. Watch, he's going to have those big, holy crap home runs that'll turn a game or maybe win a game for them. And then meanwhile, on the flip side, the interesting part is in that series, the Dodgers were the favorite that had all these bats. In this series, the favorite is the Astros, but I feel like Philly is the one that has all those interesting bats that can change on one swing, whether, like you said, whether it's Harper, whether it's Hoskins, JT Realmuto, let's not forget, another one who's having his first major playoff run. He could play a role in this too. As versatile. We saw the inside the park home run he hit earlier in the postseason. So, I mean, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a very good one, I think.
Yep, it's going to be fun. Game 1 starts up on Friday. Game 2 is Saturday, and then it flips to Philadelphia next week, starting Tuesday for Game 3. It's going to be fun to watch. And other things, just some housekeeping as we wrap this episode up. Some other things to look forward to. Finalists for MLB's major awards are November 7th. That's when we should find out that Sandy Alcantara is a Cy Young finalist. And the Cy Young Award will be announced on November 16th. Also, shout out Miguel Rojas being named a finalist for the NL Gold Glove Award at shortstop. Second time in 3 years. The Gold Glove Awards are being announced by Rawlings November 1st. So we'll be on the lookout for that. It's him, Dansby Swanson, and Ha-Seong Kim from the Padres. To be honest, I was kind of surprised by Kim. I thought Francisco Lindor would have been the third one, but either way, I mean, I felt like at the end of the season it was going to be Rojas or Dansby. They were going to be 1 and 2. So at least the 2 of them are up there. I mean, Dansby was absolutely phenomenal as well.
Maybe it makes it a 50-50 for Miggy between him and Dansby. So we'll see.
Yeah. So we have those 2. And then obviously whenever the manager is announced and hired, our podcast that immediately follows that will be a full recap, analysis, thoughts on all of that. And then once the World Series ends, free agency and all of that, all the fun stuff of the offseason truly begins. So
and you at the winter meetings like a month after that. So
yep. First week of December, sunny San Diego. I guess I'll take my lumps and spend 4 or 5 days out there if need be. Part of the job. I get it. I'll suffer through it. We'll make it happen.
oh yeah. You have fun with that.
Yep. And on that note, that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. And we'll be back again either next week if we have a manager hire, if not the week after that, to recap everything that has gone on. Thanks so much, everyone.